Hi everyone, thanks for joining us for this Leadership Insight Streamcast as part of the discussions that we facilitate through Actualized Performance Solutions. I'm Jeff Militall. I'm joined by Dan Chase, founding partners of Actualized Performance Solutions, and we thought it might be a good idea today to dive into some things that we think might be helpful for you in your leadership roles that kind of focus on the fact that leadership actually can be a simple thing. What do you think about that, Dan?
Yeah. Quite frankly, I think we tend to overcomplicate leadership. And one of the reasons you do that, right, I think, is if you overcomplicate leadership, you sell books and you sell seminars. You can say, I'm going to tell you something about leadership you never knew. Where I really believe leadership is probably as intuitive a topic as there is. And so what we want to do is demystify leadership. Leadership can actually be simple. Leadership is a process. Now, it's not solely this, but leadership is a process of influence, right, towards noble ends, moral ends, and leading people towards those kinds of things.
Yeah, so and maybe that is an issue where there are market incentives and forces to try and find an angle, and that may have actually just kind of led to more confusion on the subject. We've talked about this a few times, and I explained it once to my 11-year-old daughter. Let's put this graphic up on the screen. I think it's important to both of us to say, this wasn't either of us that drew this, and not to say that it's bad, but it was my 11-year-old daughter. We kind of talked through what leadership is and kind of following that kind of logic that you had, and kind of came up with, three things: supportership, compliance, and resistance. And I don't know, what's your general reaction to this little simple drawing?
I think some of the people watching this or listening to this will have seen something similar to this before. Yeah. And by the way, I want to make one point of clarification. Leadership, the exercise of leadership, is not necessarily for the faint of heart. It's not easy. What we're talking about is understanding the leadership process. Doesn't need to be overcomplicated. The actual exercise, of course, is challenging. But in this case, I just love how simple this is. If I'm trying to, towards moral ends, influence people, well, speaking generally, there are three outcomes, right? There's resistance, compliance, and then supportership. And I want you to talk a little bit more about supportership. But before I do, let me just say, anytime I talk to groups about leadership, I will always ask them, I'll say, hey, who decides whether or not you're a leader? And without exception, someone in the room or many in the room will raise their hand and say, well, we do. Right, kind of thinking like it's a motivational seminar.
I'm going to decide to be a leader today, type of thing.
Well, I hate to kind of like burst their bubble, right, and say, well, no, you can go out and tout, I'm a leader, all you want, but no, it's whether or not people decide to be active supporters that determines whether or not you're a leader. And so it's something akin. It's not the exact same. It's something akin to followership, right? But if there are leaders, there are followers, and I love this term supporter as opposed to follower. Right, and what's the difference, Jeff, between maybe a follower, followership, and supporter and supportership?
I think I'd like to think that the term supportership maybe is just a little more concise. That it gets to the point that really what you're looking to facilitate is movement as a result of people owning and coming from inside of them some degree of support that isn't forced, coerced, needs a lot of kind of attention or management or weeding, if you will. And so I think it's a nice term for us to think about, because on some level sometimes it can get a little confusing when you're trying to lead folks to know whether or not you're hitting the target. And if you could just basically ask yourself, do these people sincerely, do they genuinely support what we're trying to do here or what we've conveyed, then it kind of simplifies the picture a little bit. Do you think, by the way, that leadership gets a little bit muddied up because a lot of organizations, they're built on this notion of transactions for either profit or for mission, you know what I mean? Do you think it gets muddied up because of that? I mean, you look at this and it looks so simple. Does it get muddied up because, like, when you talk about maybe grander leaders like Martin Luther King, Abraham Lincoln, support was a thing that was the essence of the matter. Does support get muddied up by these kind of transactional elements in organizations?
I think sometimes we think that the transactional elements, or what we might call management and supervision and leadership, are mutually exclusive. And they can't be in an organization, right? There is some form of transaction. And that's okay. To me, that's the good news. That I can still manage you and hold you accountable, and you're still working there because there's a paycheck and benefits, right? And yet I can still, if I'm effective, I can still tap into something. People have mixed motivations for everything. So I can do it because there's pay and other things, but I can also do it because it speaks to my soul and because I really care about what we're doing and I see the purpose and I have a passion for it, et cetera, et cetera. And the job of the leader is to be able to navigate both of those. And that's when you get supportership.
And I think maybe something we need, and we'll probably unpack this later, but there's probably challenges in modern day organizations in that, like for example, a lot of people come and they come for exchange to do work, and they can care about it, but sometimes it's not like the reason why they wake up in the morning, and sometimes the things you're proposing, by nature of the fact that it's change and types of things that they may already not wake up in the morning to go do, might pose some complications and maybe muddy up leadership a little bit. So it's probably worth unpacking. Dan, do you have any other kind of reactions, just really quick on this diagram? We'll unpack it later, but anything else for right now?
In future sessions, we'll unpack, well, how do you get supportership then, right? The next question, if I'm, well then how do I get that? But I think most of our people will know intuitively as we talk about, well, I've got compliance from my people or resistance, or I've got supportership. I'm willing to bet right now as people are saying, they're like, they could even start placing their people in certain, or even their entire organizations in one of those three categories. But leadership, as far as understanding it goes, does not have to be complex. Supportership is what we're striving for. And when there is supportership, that by definition is when there's leadership.
If you like this video, hit subscribe and don't forget to go to actionlifesolutions.com.